Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by area realtor Jim York and York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information about the local real estate market, featuring leading experts in the real estate field.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. Today with our host Jim York and his guest Dwight Brock, Collier County Clerk of Courts.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Mr. Brock, again, thank you for coming back on our show.
Not a problem.
Just for our new viewers, people have just moved down here, could you just give us a little background about yourself? Because I know you do have an impressive resume.
Well, I don't know how impressive it is, but it's what it is. I got my undergraduate degree in business accounting at Florida State University. I received an MBA from Stetson University and a Juris Doctorate from Nova Southeast University in South Florida. I'm both a licensed certified public accountant and an attorney at law in the state of Florida. Was a prosecutor for about 11 years. I handled predominantly economic crime cases, and then I became clerk, and I've been there ever since.
And it is an elected official?
It is an elected position. It's elected every 4 years by a county-wide vote, unlike commissioners that are elected in the district. I'm elected by the entire county, and I've been there since 1994.
And how long? 1994. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, what I'd like to start in is there's been a lot of talk about foreclosures over the years, right?
Oh boy.
And so maybe you could just tell us what's happening in Collier County.
Well, you know, over the years, beginning in about 2008, you know, when the economy took a dive, you had the debacle with the real estate industry and the banks. Foreclosures all over the country just went out of sight. And Collier County was no different than everywhere else. I mean, we were probably impacted even more than most places. And the number of foreclosures that we had just skyrocketed. We are now, in 2014, down around the same level we were right before 2008, somewhere around 600 per year. I mean, it went up, I think, as much as 8,000 during the boom time for foreclosures, I guess, for the attorneys. But we're now down to around 600 to 700 a year. And I expect that to even go lower this year. You know, the change in the statute dealing with foreclosures, I think, has had a significant impact on people filing foreclosure action. And, you know, there are fewer of them out there. So.
And what kind of burden did this put on your office when we were going through all this?
Oh, I mean, it was almost a death knell. You know,
right.
We were dealing with a period in time in which there were very few resources to spread around the state. So, you know, we got caught in the crunch just like everybody else did. And our cases just went out of sight. So it had a tremendous impact. I mean, one of the things that most people don't realize is that just handling and processing a foreclosure case through the system from its inception to the point in time that we issue the certificate of title is probably the most burdensome case that we handle in the system. And that was going up by a factor of 100. It had quite a significant impact on us. So it was tough there for a while.
It was very tough. How about to tell our viewers, what are the pitfalls of buying a foreclosure?
Well, I mean, most people, you know, they all hear these infomercials on
right.
TV that, you know, make your fortune.
Yep.
And, you know, let me suggest to you that that's really a good way to lose your fortune unless you know what you're doing. Now, I've been an attorney for, what is it, 30-something years, 35 years, and I can tell you that I would be very reluctant to walk in and buy one of those on the basis of research that I'd done. I want somebody standing behind me with an insurance policy to protect me with a title insurance policy. But, you know, the thing that most people do not understand is when you buy that piece of property, it comes with any liens or encumbrances. If you're buying it from me at auction, it comes with liens and encumbrances that the court, through its final judgment, hasn't disposed of. You have the jeopardy of then buying a piece of property, and I have a real life situation where an individual walked into our office, bought a piece of property, thought they were buying it for, I think it was about $100,000, gave me a deposit of 20, only to walk out and discover that there was actually a first mortgage. All he was buying was a foreclosure sale on a second mortgage, so he took it subject to the first mortgage, and you have to give me guaranteed funds, or bank checks, so to speak. And when he discovered that, you know, he went to the bank and canceled the check. So when it got processed through the system, I obviously contacted the bank to want to know why they had canceled the check. And they said, well, he said he had lost the check. And my comment was basically, well, you know, he's probably correct. He probably did lose the check, but he lost it by negotiating it to the clerk's office through a foreclosure sale. So there are risks associated with that, and they are substantial risk, and people need to know that. You've been around the courthouse for a long time, and you know, I try to make everyone aware of the risks that are there, because I don't want to see my public get hurt.
That's right.
And you know, I don't want them to be doing something when they in fact think they're doing something else. So it's my objective trying to advise people of, you know, protect yourself. Make sure you know what you're doing before you do that. And if you don't, you know, you are just asking for trouble.
Well, I just want to let our audience know that when they're buying a liability or a lien, like you said, how could they avoid that? Because there are people down there buying them. I mean, just in general, what would be to do a title search before?
Well, you know, it has gotten to the point where a lot of the people that are actually down there buying those things are in the business of doing that. So, you know, they've either had a title search done, and some of them now are actually attorneys that are doing their own title work. So that has become more predominant in the process. And you know, you can find a title company that you could probably get to do your search for you.
That's right. And
you know, probably get somebody to buy or to insure it. But here's the problem with that: you go out and have somebody, you pay someone to do the title work, thinking that this thing is going to be sold.
That's right.
Okay, and you know, the day before I'm fixing to sell it in the auction, one of the counsel comes in and moves to cancel the sale.
Right.
They've either worked it out or something else is going on, and then you're out whatever it was that you spent doing the title search.
Exactly.
So there's risk.
Right. And how often are the sales?
They're almost every day. Generally, they're Monday through Thursday. And we don't have a lot of them on Friday, but every once in a while we will. And
they start at 11 o'clock?
They start at 11 o'clock on the, I think it's the third floor of the courthouse annex. And my staff, you know, a lot of people do it through these internet programs, but we don't. You know, we like to keep it little hands-on and still have the family feel to it. So we do it right there in the office.
Right, and just step one more time is about they have to bring cash in the deposit,
Right.
certified check.
There is a deposit required.
Right.
It's a percentage or a minimum, and I don't remember right off the top of my head what it is, but it's either 10 or 20%.
Right.
And you give me that money. You don't get it back,
No.
even if you don't end up giving me the rest of the money. You lose the deposit. That's why it's required in guaranteed funds, is because that then would go to pay for the process of having to re-advertise it and resell it if in fact you didn't come back and pay for the rest of it.
And maybe you could just touch base on your website about where they could look on the website for foreclosures.
Yeah, there is a location on the website that you can go in. It would be under the court system.
That's right.
And you can go into foreclosures, and you can actually see the judgments as they exist in the case files. And when I say case files, I use that term loosely since
Right.
they're all electronic today.
Right.
But you can see the judgment. It tells you when the court has ordered it to be sold. You need to take into consideration the fact that about 20% of those sale dates get changed. So sometime before we sell them, the court has entered an order directing us not to sell them on that particular date for whatever reason. But you can see all of that information in there on the website. And if you have any questions, you have difficulty finding it, you can always call the office, and we will be more than happy to show you. You know, it's really not all that complicated once you get into the system. You can see it. You can send to the go into the under courts under the drop-down menu, and you will see foreclosures.
That's right. Click that.
Right.
Mr. Brock, we're going to take a little short break
Not a
here, and
problem.
we'll be right back in 1 minute.
When picking a realtor, don't just pick anyone. Pick someone with experience. Pick someone with a proven track record. Pick a realtor like Jim York from Downing Fry Realty, the #1 brokerage with the most real estate transactions in the area.
My husband and I had very specific ideas about what we wanted in our new home. Jim York was able to help us find the home that was ideal for us.
With over 20 years of real estate experience in Southwest Florida, Jim York has negotiated over $200 million in sales contracts. Selecting the right realtor is a critical decision that can earn you thousands when selling or save you thousands when buying.
Jim also helped us with a mortgage lender and a good real estate attorney. He went that extra mile, and his experience says it all.
Call Jim York for a no-obligation meeting at 239-273-6727 or visit his website, www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Welcome back. Mr. Brock, just tell us about how landlord and evictions, how do you handle that at the court?
Sure. Generally speaking, a residential tenant eviction is a very uncomplicated process compared to many others. And most of the people that do tenant evictions, we'll say most, but at least a lot of the people that do tenant evictions do them pro se or without an attorney. I actually try to hold a seminar a couple of times a year, and there's one coming up at the end of
February 26th.
Right, in which we show you exactly what you have to go through. We show you the forms to fill out. I try to give you some of the pitfalls, some of the roadblocks that you want to try to avoid. I try to educate both the tenant and the landlord about their rights and obligations under the law. I'm not trying to be the people's attorney. I'm simply giving them general information. And you know, it's like any other case. You file a complaint, and they have an opportunity to respond. But the process is a very expedited process. You have only very limited, I think it's 5 days or 7 days, in which to respond in a tenant eviction action. And you know, then the court rules. There's basically only one defense to a tenant eviction action, and that is that I have either paid the party or I have put the money into the registry of the court. Sometimes there's disputes about what the amount is, but you know, it's a very simple process, and you know, we try to teach you how to go through that. Then what happens at the end, the court will enter a order or a judgment of eviction and a writ of possession, which will entitle one to go to the sheriff's department and get them to assist you in taking back possession of the property if in fact you were successful.
And remove their property out of the fund.
That is correct.
Right.
Right.
And that's February 26th.
That's February the 26th over, I think that
Orange
one
Blossom,
is Orange Blossom Library.
At the library.
Main library.
At the library. And then I see that you have another seminar coming
Right.
up here, and that's on the records public search of Collier.
We
Clerk.
teach you how to go through our website and try to find information. You know, one of the things that I would like to bring to everyone's attention with regard to our website is that I have heard from the Florida Supreme Court that they have actually approved my application to allow me to put the court cases and the documents themselves online.
Oh, really?
For the general public, whereas for the past couple of years we could only give that to attorneys and state agencies. Now we're going to be able to give it to the public as well in a lot of cases. So that's a good thing. You know, that will save the public a lot of time and effort from having to come down to the courthouse. It'll save me a lot of resources from having to hire people to help them. People can do it themselves. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. But the website is just full of information.
It is.
You know, for example, you know, if you are in business, you know, wouldn't you want to know the person that you were going into business with, what was their reputation in the community with regard to lawsuits?
Right.
You know, you might want to look at that. You know, believe it or not, you know, you had met someone that you found interesting and thought you wanted to spend some time.
Right.
You might want to go look and see whether or not they have a history of domestic violence or battery.
Right.
Those types of things. All of that information is right there and available. You know, one of the most amazing things in the world to me is sometimes I will be helping people at the counter do a tenant eviction.
Right.
And in the course of doing that, you know, they like to tell me that, you know, they just discovered that this person is not the first trip around the block for them. They've
Right.
been evicted 3 or 4 times. And I can't help but think, well, wouldn't that be something you'd want to know before you leased your property to them rather than after?
Right.
And you can find that type of information out by just going to the official records, or the court records.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know how easy it is to use, and that even, you know, marriage license are on there, mortgages, you know, liens are on there.
Right.
It's
You know, there's basically 2 sets of records. You've got the court records.
right.
Well, there's 3 sets of records.
Uh-huh.
You've got the court records,
Right.
which now will have the actual court documents on them as well. When we get that implemented after they have given us permission. Then you have official records, which are your land records.
Right.
Okay, and you know, that is by grantor, grantee. A lot of people, especially in the foreclosure arena, they know where this piece of property is, and they want to know if there's a foreclosure going on that piece of property.
Right.
Well, we don't deal with the physical address.
Right.
It's the way you can get it, though. You go to the tax collector's website and do a search on his GIS system, and it'll tell you who the owners are, and then you use the owner's name to get through
Search
my
that.
system,
Right.
and you can find that type of information out. So it's a is an interface, and you know, the tax collector's system, he gets his information directly from me. So you know, when you go in there on his system and you look at deed,
That's right.
that is tied to a book and page, he's actually referring you back to my website, which you're looking to the official records OR book and page. So there is a tremendous amount of information in that system that gets back and forth. You know, most people don't realize that today attorneys are required to file their pleadings electronically. We don't have paper anymore.
Right. Yep.
That's all done through a portal up in Tallahassee and comes back to us. It hits our system, and we automatically send it out to the other party so that they all know what's going on. So it is a very, very complicated, technologically speaking, process today. And I will be the first to tell you that if, in fact, we had not have developed the technological advances that we have in the system, that you would not be able to get the services from this clerk's office that you used to get.
Right.
Because we would not be able to afford it because the funds that run through the clerk's office have gone down appreciably. One of the things that most people don't realize that when I took office in 1994, I had about 280 employees. Today, I have 180 employees.
Wow.
So we have had quite a reduction in the burden on the taxpayer as a consequence of the use of technology and the efficiencies that we've created through that process. Then you have board minutes and records. You know, if you ever have an occasion in which you have insomnia, you know, just go pull up a board session and sit down and listen to it for a little bit. I guarantee you it'll put you to sleep in a heartbeat. So all of that information there, we have a lot of financial information that is available on our website. So, you know.
Well, they should attend the March 31st seminar.
That's correct.
That's down in Lely at the library down there.
That's right. And we'll go through and show you exactly how to do all of that good stuff.
And one of the final things here is, how does somebody file a small claim in the Collier County?
You can actually do it electronically, or you, if you're pro se, that means that you don't have an attorney, you can walk down to the counter and file what is a complaint, but is titled a statement of claim. Okay, and you just file that, and then you also file a document which is called a summons, or give us a copy of it, and we will issue that summons, and then you've got to get somebody that has the ability to serve process to go serve it. Sheriff is one.
Right.
So you can go through that process having them served. Once that occurs, they then have 20 days in which to answer, and that means that they've got to answer the complaint you have just issued. And you're off and running. The thing that most people don't understand, that, you know, somebody should tell all of these people to start with. You know, you go in and you get a judgment.
Right.
You know, your war has just begun.
Fun.
Okay, because the next thing you've got to do is you've got to figure out some way to enforce that judgment. I mean, the judgment's just a piece of paper from a judge. You know, converting that into cash is a little more difficult process, and nobody helps you do it. You've got to do it by yourself. So everybody needs to think about that when they're dealing with these processes of going to the courtroom. My law school professor in trial practice one time made the observation that, you know, if you have an opportunity to be part of the solution as opposed to having somebody to make the resolution for you, you're probably much better off after all. And he was talking about jurors, but the same thing is true when you're dealing with judges. You know, jurors are basically nothing more than 6 pairs of shoes, most of which are untied. So you know, you need to keep that in mind as you go through this process, that you know, if you can resolve it yourself and be a part of the resolution, even though you may have to compromise a little, it's always better to do that.
Mr. Brock, we're going to take another short little break here, and we're going to be right back, and Michael is going to ask Mr. Brock a question.
Not a problem.
Selecting the right realtor is a critical decision that can earn you thousands when selling.
Jim sold our villa in just 2 days. We got the highest price in the community. He then helped us to negotiate and purchase our new home here in Tiburon. I'd recommend Jim. His expertise made all the difference.
Call Jim York for a no-obligation meeting at 239-273-6727 or visit his website, www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Welcome back. Mr. Brock, we're going to go to Michael, and he's going to ask you a question.
Certainly.
Okay.
Mr. Brock, how does you being an independent auditor help the public?
You know, if you think about the question from the perspective of government as our founding fathers developed it, both state and federal government has checks and balances in it.
That's right.
They have the what's called the co-equal three-legged or branches of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. If you think about local government, that doesn't exist. The Board of County Commissioners is both the executive and the legislative branch of government. So that check and balance no longer works in local government the way that it does in the federal system. But when our forefathers created the Constitution in the state of Florida, they saw a need to have that check and balance. And the way they created that check and balance was by creating the independent office of the Clerk of the Circuit Court, who is the check and balance on the financial activities that take place within the county, in that it's the clerk's responsibility to make the determination that any expenditure that is proposed by the Board of County Commissioners must be legal. And if in fact it is not legal, the clerk is to not make the expenditure. And if you look at the Constitution and the law as to who has the custody of all the money, it's not the Board of County Commissioners, it's the clerk.
Right.
They make the determination of how to spend it, but the clerk is the custodian of all of the money. And the clerk is required not to spend it unless he can make the determination that, one, the board has approved it, two, that it is legal. And at that point in time, the clerk can then expend the money once that determination is made. And they threw a little catch in there that most people don't realize. And that is that if I make a expenditure that is not legal, there are both civil and criminal penalties if I do it knowingly for making that unlawful expenditure. They actually have a provision that says the clerk is personally potentially liable for those expenditures that are not lawful. So as you can see, that desire by our forefathers to create that check and balance in government came in with a strong arm, in that they wanted to ensure that the clerk did what the clerk was supposed to do. Now, so through that process, there is the check and balance, or the watchdog on the expenditures of public funds. I'll give you some examples that have happened around the state where the clerk was not as vigilant as maybe they should have been. And up in Okaloosa County, up in the Panhandle, you have the county expending millions of dollars for a yacht, millions of dollars for a home up in Georgia that were for a county employee.
Right.
This happens all over the place. So, you know, the clerk is required to be vigilant to protect the taxpayers, to make sure that that legality occurs. It has a function from the standpoint of trying to ensure that the public is getting their best bang for their buck through statutes that require competitive bidding.
Right.
And in addition to that, you know, it has provisions in there that the clerk must ensure that other statutory provisions are agreed to or met. And that's important from the standpoint of protecting the public, because otherwise, you know, if you've been in Collier County very long, you realize that all of the real work on the decisions that are made by the Board of County Commissioners are generally made well before the meeting, and the meeting is just out there for show.
Right.
So, you know, it is that process that creates, I think, confidence in our public in government to the extent that it is. And that's why I think it is important that you have the independent clerk of the circuit court that acts as that watchdog.
Mr. Brock, I really appreciate you coming this afternoon. I know I can say that you've done a good job, and you have my endorsement, and you've always had an open door policy with me and my clients coming down there to give us information. And again, I want to thank you very much.
Not a problem. That's my job, I think.